All right, our first bow is going to be a single layered bow. So we have one ribbon and I used 1.5 inches. This is great for adding on packages, a smaller wreath, the top of a sign. So you are going to need an 1.5 inch ribbon, and I cut mine into 1 1/8 yards or 40.5 inches, however you want to measure it. So you need your ribbon. We use some floral wire, and then I folded the wire in half, so there's a loop right here. Because it's easier, I just slip knot my wire around the bow. And then you need a thin, narrow ribbon that's going to go across the center of the bow. And for that one, you probably only need about 5 inches at the most. So you just need a little piece. All right. So once you cut your ribbon, like I said, make sure it's 1 1/8 yards. Lay it out flat. There's going to be a right side and a wrong side. Mine, like, it's kind of hard to tell because the pattern goes through. But whatever ribbon you're using, make sure you just know which one's the right side and which one's the wrong side. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to measure out the tail. So for this tail, we measure out 4 inches, and then I'm just going to pinch it right here. So this tail is 4 inches long. I'm going to hold it where I pinched, and it depends on if you're right-handed or left-handed. I'm right-handed, so I usually am kind of making it with my left hand and holding it with my right. So you have a 4-inch tail. Now we're going to measure out 8 inches for the loop. So I'm holding it here and I'm going to pinch it here at the beginning. Like I said, 8 inches. And then you're going to fold it like that. That creates a 4-inch loop out of your 8-inch piece. I hope that makes sense. We're going to be folding it like that. So you have a tail on one side and a loop on the other. So you measure out your 8, you pinch, you bring it in, and then you just kind of hold it. Now, wrong side or right side, you want the right side showing for this next loop. So you make this loop, you don't have to twist or anything. Your wrong side should be facing up right now. We're going to measure another 8 inches, and I measure from where my gathering is, that's the center of my bow, 8 inches, and then I pinch again. Now for this one, we're just going to bring it in and add it right next to where I bunched. I don't stack them. I put them right next to each other, and then I just hold it. So your right side should be showing on both of these loops. You have a tail here, and you don't have to twist or anything. So for this next one, this is the center of the bow. I hold that where the 8 is, and I measure out another 8 inches for this loop. And I'm going to just bring it under so the right side is still showing, and I'm going to add it right next to this one. Not underneath, but right next to them. You can kind of eyeball and make sure your loops are the same width. You want everything symmetrical. For this next and last loop, 8 inches again, and gather. Bring it in and hold it right there. So you should have 2 loops on each side, and a tail coming out the bottom and a tail coming out the top. Just like that. Now what you're going to do is you're going to hold it. You're going to take your bow wire, and where the loop is on the center of your, well, like where you folded it for the wire, I kind of slide that under my thumb. So I'm holding the wire with my, so this hand is freed up. I'm going to take the ends of the wire, go around the bow, and bring them through the little loop. So it's like a slip knot. You just pull it nice and tight. Try not to tangle up your end. And then you just want to tighten it. I usually tighten it from the back of the bow. That way my wire is coming out the back for attaching it onto things. So you're going to tighten it real good. And you're just going to do a little single knot. Perfect. And even it out a little bit. So the wire is coming out the bottom of my bow. This is the top of my bow. At this point, if you have any loops that look big or small, you can kind of pull here and there. Like if you want to make a loop bigger or smaller, round it out a little. It does not have to be perfect. And there you go. So next step is going to be adding the center. And that's going to cover where our wire is. You do not have to do this, but it just gives it a good final touch. So I have just a 5/8 with red ribbon. And I'm just going to wrap it around the center. And when I wrap it around and pinch it on the bottom, it kind of drags my tail and loops kind of back. So I pull those back forward so they're not bent down. It's another reason why you always want to use good wired ribbon. And the purpose of the center ribbon is basically just to cover where your wire is. So what we're going to do is flip it over, and obviously this is way more than what we need. I'm going to trim this ribbon and just leave enough to basically fold over and glue so it's covering that knot. Cut it shorter, and I'm just going to put glue on the inside of both of these flaps and glue them down. Careful not to burn your fingers. Let it dry a little bit. Takes a second. That's it. All right. Now there are two ways you can leave the tails, either straight across like this. Not obviously, I would clean it up a little, or you can do the dovetail. That is my favorite. So what you do for that is, I'll try to get as close as possible. You have your ribbon here. We're going to fold it in half, and I'm going to line up the edges of the ribbon. So the edges are together and the fold is here. Now I'm going to cut at an inward angle towards the bow so that, watch, cut at an angle so that when you open it, the edges of the ribbon are coming to a point. So it kind of depends on how you're holding it. So I always just triple check before you snip it. You want to make sure that the edges of the ribbon are the long part and the fold of the ribbon is the short part. So you can either cut inward towards your bow, or depending on how you're holding it, you could be cutting outward towards the, like away from the bow, which is a good idea if you don't want to accidentally cut a loop. So I'm going to do that to both of my tails. And then I'm going to take Fray Check. Hard to tell because of my light. We have this on our website. This is just a clear gloss. It dries after like a minute and it seals all your edges. You just run it along the edge of your ribbon. It's like probably like clear nail polish consistency. And it'll harden and keep all of the edges of your ribbon from fraying. So it's amazing. And I usually don't cut the tip of it. I usually poke it with a needle. That way it's a tiny, tiny little hole. And then I just put my needle in it to store it. I use it every day, so it doesn't really matter. And there is your bow. Just a simple single layer. You could make a smaller version of this for like hair bows, all kinds of fun stuff. And then I left my wire on just so, depending on what I want to use it for, I can just tie it onto my project and then just snip the remaining wire after. Hopefully your bow looks somewhat like this. If not, just keep trying. Don't get overwhelmed. This is just the beginning. All right, now on to the next one.